Jordan Kent alongside Michael Holton. Quick little bit of NBA news. The Blazers have recalled Tim Quarterman from the NBDL, and Pau Gasol of the San Antonio Spurs broken fourth metatarsal, that's the bone in your hand, during pregame warmups. We'll have more information about that as that story continues to develop. But for more on the NBA, let's please welcome in our good friend Rick Kamla from NBA TV. And Rick, I want to start with All-Star voting. We've heard a lot of news about it, and if it's all right if I ask you, can you shed some light on maybe some of the individual players you voted for this year?
Well, yeah, it's great to be on with you guys. Shout out to Blazer Nation. I don't, actually have a vote or whatever, but in terms of the best 12 in each conference, I like to take my stab at it on Twitter, and Damian Lillard is in my 12 in the West. The play has dipped a little bit since he had the injury, but this is a guy that was smoking at like 28, 29 a game until he had that injury, and right now he's over 26 a game. And I thought one of my great basketball outrages and injustices was Dame not being an all-star last year. Obviously, he took it out on the rest of the West in the second half, but I'm a huge fan of Damian Lillard. Guys, I think he's transcended to perennial all-star. I mean, I think he's a sensational player. I think he's a future Hall of Famer, and I just think of Damian Lillard as an all-star, and I think he should be there every year.
And you brought up a good point. You said Dame's production prior to the injury was a little bit greater, and he then obviously, like any player, bouncing back from an injury. When it comes to all-star voting, how important is it to be playing your best basketball as we get closest to the voting, or do people still carry the same weight of your accomplishments, your achievements, your play that maybe you had the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season?
Great question. I mean, let's talk about the Heisman, or as I like to call it, the Liesman for a minute. Lamar Jackson crushes all of these, inferior teams, racks up all these stats. People put the Heisman to bed, and then Deshaun Watson over the second half was by far the better player, and over the course of the whole season, by far the better player. But it's sort of I already put the whole argument and decision to bed. I think the entire body of work, and it's a challenge for people. Some people go to sleep, they turn off, they see a little bit and they make a decision and they hang their hat on that. I'm a full body of work guy. I'm watching League Pass every night if I'm not working NBA TV. And what Dame did at the beginning of the season was spectacular. What he's doing now is really, really good, very much so above average. So you got to look at the full body of work, but I don't think a lot of people that have some of these votes, I don't think a lot of them look at the full body of work.
And you're watching all of these games on NBA League Pass, and Michael and I were going through these numbers for each team each night as we're getting set for each game. And I want to get your thoughts on what many people perceive to be the scoring explosion going on in the NBA right now, and just what direction you feel the game is starting to go to as we have a new generation of players starting to take over.
Well, you can't touch on the perimeter, you can't guide on the perimeter, you can't steer on the perimeter, and that rule's been in effect for a long time. But now they're getting so finite with their ruling on screening and is it illegal, and I think defenders are just like, to hell with it, I'm not even touching the guy, and I think there's just a soft mentality on defense where you if you like really be up on a guy in a regular season game, you have a tendency to get those calls. Obviously in playoff scenarios they quote unquote let them play a little bit more, but guys don't want to hear tweet and go to the bench with 2 fouls or 3 fouls in the second quarter, four fouls in the third quarter. They want to stay on the floor and get numbers and help their team win. So I think the rules have impacted a lack of defense, especially on the perimeter, and that's why you see all these perimeter guys just exploding and having huge games.
Rick, Michael Holton here. You make a really good point because people are always trying to compare eras of basketball, this era versus, back in the day. And you make a point that I think we need to highlight and to point out. The rules of the game being different changes the era and the style of play. So I don't know that you can compare today's player. Can you say, how would Steph Curry have played back in the day? Would you agree with that assessment?
I totally agree. And and I think Steph Curry would transcend any era. I think he would be good even in the Smash Mouth 90s where, it was all about who's tougher, who's stronger, who rebounds better. He still would have been a shot maker in that era, but he wouldn't be as dazzling as he is now. Think about a Steph Curry game against Derek Harper. One of the it's the Derek Harper rule. He was that guy, put his hands all over, guided you. He's one of the best defensive point guards ever, but it was a very physical style of play. It was very defensive and non-offensive, conducive style of play. And the NBA wanted to, get scoring up, get fan interest up. It worked, and I love it. I love watching a 125 to 121 in regulation. That's my kind of game. I'm a fantasy guy. But there's been a change in philosophy, and we're seeing it play out right now. But Curry would not be pulling from 30. That from the hip flick shot if he had Derek Harper, all over him. So it's a different era, but I love today's NBA.
Rick, as a follow-up to that, do you think, or I think, and I guess I'm trying to see if you agree, that the rules are affecting defensive competitiveness? And you highlighted the dynamics of it, but if you widen that lens a little bit, I think that's a little concerning going forward. I mean, scoring is great, entertaining is great. I love offense. I mean, I love, having a popcorn and a diet soda watching a 1:30 game. But at the end of the day, you got to roll up your sleeves and stop a dude from scoring.
You forgot you have red vines too, Michael.
Come on, man. Let Rick talk, man. Get off the vines.
No, look, and that's why at the end of the day, the team in the playoffs, on in the playoffs, to the conference finals and to the finals, the team that gets stops is the team that wins. And offense. Look. I think about Houston. Houston to me has Western Conference Finals upside. I think that if everybody's healthy, they're a nasty team. Are they going to play D? Maybe a little bit more in the playoffs, but you've got to score 114 on them. And 114 is their average. If they're really firing it up, now you got to match 120 with them. That's very difficult for most teams in the NBA. So I think Houston looks to me, I think Houston would beat San Antonio. I think Houston would beat LA. But I think Golden State would be able to play just enough defense. Durant's a terrific rim protector this year. Draymond, I think, is going to be DPOY. I called it before the season. So Iguodala. So Golden State and Klay Thompson guarding multiple position guys, they can crank up some D. That's the little secret formula for the Warriors. It's a very offensive game, but at the end of the day, you need that D. And Cleveland's D in games 5, 6, and 7 against Golden State, one of the reasons why they won the chip last year.
Rick, I want to ask you a question about something that, when you start comparing eras of basketball, there's something in today's game that's new. At least it's labeled new, and that is players resting. When you look at the schedule and what it takes to play into June, it seems like only championship caliber teams are really resting players. San Antonio, Cleveland routinely does it. I want to get your take on that because back in the day, nobody took games off. What's changed?
Well, that's a hard one because all of the conditions back in the day were so much more difficult, right? They weren't on charter planes. They didn't have this around-the-clock treatment, stim, massage and all this stuff. It was a much more sort of, for lack of a better word, barbaric situation. They'd have 3 games, on back-to-back nights. They'd be flying, non-charter planes to make those. And those guys didn't take. Not that I know. I wasn't, following the NBA in the 70s, but I don't recall, resting players being a thing back then. So I'm not really sure why the difference. I know teams are being way more cautious with their gigantic investment. You've got $100 million on Adams. You've got $100 million on Whiteside. You've got huge investments in these guys. And I think they're trying to protect that investment a little bit while still managing the competitiveness and going for the win. Now, you mentioned the contenders. And to me, a Memphis, a Charlotte, a team that's not there yet but striving to be there, I don't really get the resting player thing for teams like that. I'm not trying to call out Memphis and Charlotte. I'm just bringing them up as examples of good, not great teams. But to me, if you know you're playing into June, rest guys. if you don't know where you're going to be in the playoffs or if you're going to make the playoffs, I really don't understand resting guys in that scenario.
One player that certainly doesn't seem like they've rested at all this season is Russell Westbrook, and he was voted number 1 by his players in the NBA All-Star voting, yet he doesn't become an All-Star starter. Your thoughts on Westbrook's play so far this season and what he's been doing down in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, fellas, let's take a little credit as well. We're media members, and I didn't have a vote in the process, but media and player had Westbrook number 1 in the guard voting in the West, and Steph won the fan voting at the guard position in the West. And that figures. I mean, everybody loves Steph. You meet an 8-year-old boy, you meet an 11-year-old girl, you meet a 12-year-old boy, you're talking to them, hey, who's your favorite player? Every single time it's Steph Curry. And I'm not mad about that. He's a sensational player. He's one of the, if not the funnest players to watch since, for me, Magic Johnson. So I love Steph Curry. But as you go younger, I'm 47 years old, as you go younger with the people who are voting and opinionating on the NBA, the love for Stephen Curry billows and grows. So I'm not mad about that because the fans have their say. But is it right? No. Russell Westbrook and James Harden should be the starting guards in the West, period. But Steph's popularity can't be ignored, and that's why he's there. Now, the change in All-Star voting, guys, happened just in time. Nothing against Zaza Pachulia. Nice player. Solid blend-in, roll guy, glue guy for Golden State. But he should not be starting the All-Star game under any circumstance. He finished the fan voting number 2 among Western front-court players. If we're back in the old system where it's determined on fan voting, Zaza is starting the All-Star game, and somebody who should be there wouldn't be there. That's not right. So thank goodness that they got the player voting and the media voting just in time, because Zaza obviously didn't make it.
And you touch on an interesting point. You mentioned the popularity amongst the general fan base for some players. Does that have any influence whatsoever on how the media members might vote when you see particular players out there in the media a little bit more than others based upon their popularity amongst the general fan base?
Great question. I think more so with that, I think media members are seasoned, grizzled, cynical enough to not sort of be seduced by the wild, dazzling play. And I think it's more access. Are you nice to me? When I ask you a question, do you look me in the eye and give me a good answer? Or do you answer me like DeMarcus Cousins? I think media members, I think in terms of popularity, you can gain popularity with the media by doing that type of stuff. And really, that's the way human beings should act. I'm just basically saying the golden rule, treat people like you want to be treated. But that doesn't always happen in NBA locker rooms. And I think the guys that are sort of on the surly side of things don't get the benefit of the doubt from the media. And a lot of times that goes to the court and they don't get the benefit of the doubt from the refs. But I don't think I probably in a few instances, but I would like to think that the media members that are picked for this are the best of the best, presumably. I don't think the best of the media is easily seduced by dazzling plays and popularity and all that kind of stuff. I think they're trying to get it right.
Rick, great stuff. Thank you so much for taking some time to join us, and continue to enjoy the rest of the season as we get set for the All-Star break.
Guys, thanks for the time. Thanks for the compliment. Go Blazers. Take it easy.